Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Winning Digital Customers Show. It is Thanksgiving season. And today we're going to talk about some things that every digital professional, everybody working in the digital space really needs to be thankful for, or at least can take the opportunity to be thankful for this Thanksgiving season. And, well, anytime you want, to be honest. And first, I just want to talk for a moment about the idea of gratitude. When I was a kid and Thanksgiving came along, I kind of thought of Thanksgiving as this obligation. Somebody's done something for you and you ought to be thankful. It's only polite to be thankful, or it's your obligation. You should thank people. Someone opens the door for you, you say thank you. But as an adult, I came to understand something different, which is that Thanksgiving isn't really for the person you're thanking. It's really for you. And what I learned over the years is that feeling of appreciation and gratitude for others who've done things for us, who've built things that we now benefit from and rely upon, that feeling of appreciation is one of the most powerful things that we have to put us in a great mood, or to inspire us, or to help us be calm in times of anxiety or what have you. So I want to say that, I'm going to talk about a bunch of things that I think deserve our thanks, but thanking all of these things I'm going to talk about today may not help the recipients of those thanks. And so I just wanted to start by making this point, that I think that the real power, I've done work for many years with Tony Robbins, and he talks about this idea of living your life with an attitude of gratitude. And in addition to rhyming, this powerful notion that actually can really transform your emotional landscape of your life if you go around, instead of being annoyed and frustrated at all the things that didn't work and all your mobile phone, your cell signal didn't connect or whatever, but instead thinking and focusing about all those things that actually have been given to you and are really great gifts that you benefit from every day. It's easy to forget about all the things we've been given because, we become accustomed to them. That's kind of the nature of human psychology. We get used to things and then we stop focusing on them and we just think about them, how the way things are. But of course, many people have done many things to build a world in which we live today. And that includes many aspects of the world beyond digital, of course. But today we're going to talk about some things that I think that every digital professional has the opportunity to really be thankful for. The first category is pioneers. The people who established the core technologies that our entire digital world rests on today. So I'll just mention a few. People like Grace Hopper, one of the first computer programmers. She worked on the Harvard Mark I computer, and she helped create COBOL. I think the first, or certainly one of the first, real programming languages. She invented the first compiler that could take, human written code and turn it into code that could be read at speed by a machine. So someone who was a huge pioneer. The technologies that she built and created obviously have since been eclipsed by many other technologies, but these are the people whose work, well, Einstein said, if I've seen farther, it is only because I stood on the shoulders of giants. And I think these are some of the giants that not only do we stand on, but many of the people between the work we do today and their pioneering work stood on. Another person would be Alan Turing. He was the person who really invented the computer. He didn't actually build one, but just the whole concept of a computer and how it might work on a mechanical level is something that he invented and described in 1936. And it is really his pioneering thinking that led to the engineering work when the technology evolved to the point that his vision of a computer could actually be realized. We have people like John von Neumann, who was a Hungarian mathematician who developed the first computer, the ENIAC computer at the University of Pennsylvania, or Dennis Ritchie, the creator of Unix. So I think, and also C, like both the creator of the Unix operating system and also of the C programming language. Again, Unix, of course, still very popular today. C has been eclipsed by other programming languages as well, but these are people whose thinking is still very much a part of the modern technologies that underpin not just the internet, but almost all technologies today. So that's the first category. And then I think we have a more recent category of pioneers that also we owe a great debt of gratitude to. People like Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web, or Vint Cerf, who was kind of often referred to as the father of the internet, and who created the TCP/IP protocols on which all communications still go. Of course, now we have newer versions of those protocols, but all the ways in which computers all around the world are able to identify and send messages to each other is based on the pioneering work of Vint Cerf. Or Bob Metcalfe, who was a pioneer, worked at Xerox, and developed many standards around the internet and other forms of internet computing. And then, of course, Mark Andreessen, who was the software engineer who, when he was at the University of Illinois, created the first web browser, Mosaic. And of course, nobody uses Mosaic today, but it was many of the principles that he created for Mosaic are still present in browsers like Firefox and Chrome and Edge and the other browsers that we use today. So he really envisioned the user interface by which people would browse the web. And so again, pioneers, the giants on whose shoulders we all stand. Of course, some of them are still around and some of them are not. But nevertheless, these are people who everything we do today is possible because of the thinking and creativity and ingenuity and resourcefulness that they brought into the world. I think another area of gratitude, and I've talked about this on the livecast before, is the military, because so much of the funding that went to develop technologies like the microprocessor, like the internet itself, which most know began as a kind of collaboration between the US military and a number of large academic institutions, that was the creation of the internet. And since then, so many other technologies, such as a GPS. GPS was invented, and obviously it's now core to so many features that we enjoy on our smartphones, but it was invented initially by the military for defense purposes. And they put the first satellites in orbit that would allow GPS tracking. Digital photography was also really invented by, or at least the invention of it was funded by the military so that they could have satellite photography. Because of course, you could take a picture with a camera on Earth using film, but you couldn't very well take a picture from a satellite on film and somehow get the film down to Earth. So the whole idea of needing to be able to take a photo and turn it into bits and bytes and send it down by a satellite was really initially created by money from the Defense Department. And now, of course, digital cameras are a part of so many aspects of our lives, whether it's pictures we take for Instagram or security cameras or other applications that gather data and use computer vision to gather intelligence from data. I mentioned earlier, of course, the government sponsored the invention of the internet. So these are just some of the many aspects of the digital world on which we build that were funded by the military. Another category that we can take a moment and thank are the digital infrastructure companies. And some of these companies, of course, have made an enormous amount of money off of the digital world. But companies like Verizon and AT&T, these companies established infrastructure like laying fiber optic cable across the ocean and putting up cell towers for 2G, then 3G, then 4G, and now 5G, so that we would all have the increasingly rapid broadband wireless communication, fiber optic to the home, other methods of making sure that we stay ubiquitously connected to our digital world. And while, again, today, recognizing that these companies have a strong profit motive, but they were also visionary, and in some cases were laying cable and establishing mobile infrastructure well ahead of the certainty of demand. And there were times, I know, where Verizon, for example, was investing many, many hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars, in infrastructure that wasn't yet needed. It was for the future. And there were some, financial analysts who criticized them and speculated that, they may be overbuilding and they may be wasting money laying infrastructure that wasn't clearly needed yet. And obviously those analysts were mistaken. And the demand has been enormous, and Verizon and others have profited from that. But, despite their profit benefit, I still think that we need to acknowledge and recognize that it wouldn't be possible for us to build solutions today that rely on ubiquitous connectivity and broadband connectivity if some of these companies hadn't done what they do and do well. And in the same sort of broad category would be companies like Amazon Web Services or Rackspace or the other leading cloud-based companies, Google Cloud, who have given us not only the infrastructure to host applications, but the tools for so many companies. Netflix streams everything from, or at least best of my knowledge, everything from Amazon Web Services. And so many startups are able to more rapidly create new digital capabilities because companies have invested in making infrastructure easy and scalable. You don't have to wait for hardware to show up and set up your own data center. You can just, in a couple of hours, set up a whole bunch of services in one of these cloud-based solutions. Microsoft Azure is another one, and provide all kinds of tools to make it easier and quicker for companies to develop great new digital capabilities. And I'm sure many of you who are in the business of creating these capabilities are relying on one or multiple of these cloud-based service providers. And again, they wouldn't be there today if they hadn't been both had the vision and the investment to make sure they were providing those capabilities for us. And so that kind of dovetails to the visionaries themselves, who, another category, who created the applications, which not only are a key part of our digital ecosystem, applications like Google and Facebook and Skype, Venmo, Airbnb, Amazon, but that also inspired whole categories. Because of course, Skype, was an application that inspired dozens of other similar or related applications, including, for example, Zoom and other applications that allow people to use the internet to connect to each other for different flavors of video conferencing and screen sharing. Airbnb and other gig-based economy or sharing economy companies were inspirations for companies like Uber or Lyft or so many others that built whole new business models in the digital world and proved that there are many other ways to build a company other than the traditional way of, if you want to be in the hospitality business, build hundreds of hotels and start renting the room. So these are companies, not only Venmo, not only a key payment part of our payment infrastructure today, but again, an inspiration to show it's possible. So I think these visionaries and the teams behind them are also part of the digital world, those shoulders of giants that we all stand on, whether we're operating in their immediate direct industries or not. I would be remiss if I didn't also say that we should be thankful for the investors and the venture capital and other types of investment companies, private equity companies who have been bold and been willing to fund so many of these things. Companies like Excel Partners and Breyer Capital, who put up the $12.7 million initially to fund Facebook at a time when it wasn't at all clear what Facebook was going to become. And, say what you will about Facebook, but it's clearly been a key glue, not only to holding people together and providing experiences for people that they value, but from an advertising ecosystem perspective, extremely, extremely important. And of course, those investors profited handsomely. Their 12.7 million is worth over 9 billion today. So clearly that was money well spent, but nevertheless, that was clearly money at risk. Likewise, SoftBank, who invested in Alibaba, or Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield, and Sequoia Capital, that provided the first handful of $1 million in 1999 to fund Google. These types of companies, and Mark Andreessen, who was, of course, the inventor of Mosaic, is now himself a venture capitalist and put some of the early money in behind GitHub. So these people who come forth and see an opportunity, they are visionaries in their own right. They may not be the product creators, but they're the people who put their money where their vision is and are able to make possible the scaling of many of these businesses, particularly because in the digital world, in many cases, companies need a lot of investment before they can start to bring in revenue. They need to build a great product. They need to hire all kinds of engineers. They need to pay Amazon Web Services for lots of servers, all these types of things, long before the first nickel of revenue comes in. And so that means that somebody has to be able to front the money. And these investors, of course, have been a key part of doing that. So that's another category that we can stop at our Thanksgiving table if you want and take a moment to thank Kleiner Perkins, even though, of course, again, they've also been thanked by the market. And I think also another category would be the companies and the executives at those companies, large brands who have fought to get those companies into the digital world so that they could not only survive and thrive, but deliver all the great capabilities. Jeff Zucker, when iTunes first launched, and when they first launched episodic television on iTunes anyway, initially iTunes, of course, was just music. Jeff Zucker was the first executive who was bold enough to say, what, we're going to put, I think it was NBC, Jeff Zucker and NBC and Disney and Michael Eisner at Disney, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was Ovid, Michael Eisner's successor at Disney. In any case, the executives who said, we're gonna take a risk on this new method of distribution. Even though we're not clear if the business model is going to be smart in the end, we're going to take a risk and we're going to try new things. Larry Kramer, at the time, the president of CBS, who first put professional basketball on the internet for streaming. The executives at Lego, who, they were having in around 2003, they were really struggling. Sales were down. They were losing money. And the CEO at that time, Jürgen Vig Knutstorp, came in and focused on digital transformation and brought all kinds of digital capabilities, brought Lego into the digital age. Ultimately, that led them to becoming I think they still are the number one largest toy company. They beat Mattel. They surpassed Mattel as the largest toy company as a result of that digital transformation. But, these things are never easy. Domino's, another example of a company that was struggling back in 2008. Their stock had hit an all-time low. And then the executives there embarked upon digital transformation, focused on things like texting to order a pizza, connecting with Alexa, Google Home, Twitter, Facebook. Of course, not all of that in 2008, but over time, in the course of their digital transformation, and ultimately really brought Domino's back to a great level of success because they were aligned with the needs of today's digital customers. And these executives who brought these companies into the sort of digital world, not only should be thanked by their companies, and surely they should, but also because they've created examples that all companies can use. Believe me, I'm sure they faced a lot of resistance within their own organizations in terms of being able to get the investment and the support and overcoming resistance to change. And their ability to do that not only helped their companies and help their customers, but also served as an example for other legacy brands that weren't Facebook, that weren't Amazon, that weren't Airbnb, that it is possible for a pre-digital company to transform and be successful in a digital world. And, lastly, let's thank good old Al Gore. Remember Al Gore, who, of course, was mocked during the presidential run that he made for supposedly having claimed to have invented the internet. But in fact, when Gore was vice president, he was talking extensively about the idea of at the time, he called it an information superhighway. And he and other politicians supported the legislation and the funding that was necessary to take what at the time was a very nascent internet and turn it into a commercial platform. He envisioned the idea that the internet could become as important as our highway system or our rail system in terms of empowering commerce in this country. Visionaries like Al Gore actually, it's sort of, he didn't invent the internet like some of the people I mentioned earlier. He didn't come up with the technology, but he was one of the most powerful voices in government behind making sure that we put in place the components to enable not just individual organizations to talk to each other via networking, but a unified, accessible to everyone, as he put it, information superhighway, which was quite prescient and is now the modern internet today. So I think we should remove any stain on his reputation for a claim of inventing the internet. Of course, no one person is responsible for anything that happens in the world largely, and certainly not for our digital world, but he belongs up there with all the other pioneers that I talked about before, and the investors and the creators and the visionaries, as someone who was a fellow visionary and a fellow investor in terms of making sure government funds were applied to the success of the internet. So those are some things that hopefully have given you some additional things to be thankful for. Of course, in my world, I'm also super thankful for my company and all the employees here, for my family, for the wonderful community that I live in here in New York and New Jersey, for the fact that we're hopefully finally coming out of COVID, and my friends and family are all safe and healthy and well, and looking forward to a great 2022. So many things to be thankful in the personal world as well. But nevertheless, I think it's great for those of us that are thriving, whose careers are thriving, whose businesses are thriving as a result of the world that we live in, this great digital world that we live in. Take a few moments and remember that there's a lot of people whose efforts form the foundation for the world that we have today. And there's no harm in stopping and taking a moment of gratitude for all of them during your Thanksgiving this year. So hope you do. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday season with your friends and family. I thank you for watching and listening, as always, to the Winning Digital Customer Show. Until I see you next time, keep transforming.